Well, people, we have a new horror for you right now. It's coming from those people at Shudder, right? It is Shadow of God, the new film from Michael Peterson, written by Tim Cairo. It is produced by Kendall Anlian, Curtis David Harder, David Haight, Taylor Nordrick, and Michael Peterson. It's executive produced by Priscilla Rose Smith, Mark O'Brien, Brendan Halloran. That name does seem familiar. Cinematography was handled by David Barron. Right, Rob Grant is on the editing boards. Right, casting Coco Kleppinger. Production design is Myron Hyrak. Luke Moore was set decoration, and Leanne Smith is costume design. Hair and makeup, special makeup, all of that jazz. We have Chantel Capri and David Traynor. So our cast. We have got Mark O'Brien as Mason Harper. His friend, good friend, Tanis Green, is played by Jacqueline Byers. Shaun Johnston is Mason's dad, Angus. Then there's Bo, played by Adrian Howe. Kerry, played by Barb Mitchell. Lucifer, played by Josh Krudas. Father Scott, played by David Fian. Stan Nelson, played by David Hysom. Right, Gail, played by Emily James. Rimon Joshi plays the store clerk. A young version of Tanis is played by Alexis McKenna. They don't have the young version of Mason, though, for whatever reason. Angela Ramirez is played by Sophia Skates. I believe she's the woman at the very start, right? And our police constable, who we see, who talks to Cat Tanis, is played by Cara Azevedo. So the gist of the story, right? While performing an unauthorized exorcism on his father, an elite exorcist suspects the entity he's doing battle with might be a holy being. Perhaps even God. Ooh. This was a creepy one. Right, I don't usually watch horrors at night. Sometimes you watch them and you be like, that was fine. I could have watched that whenever. Right, now because I just had to check the length and everything, so I threw this on late last night. I think it was like 1 a.m, and we open up with this exorcism. I'm like, nah, not today, son. Not today. And so, yeah, watched it in the morning. And, we open up with this exorcism. And I'll say this, right? They've really got a creepy ass atmosphere going. They've got that on lock, right? And just in this opening scene, right, you can see the trepidation, like the uncertainty and, a little glimmer of fear on Father Scott and Mason's faces, right? Which I thought was, they got that down really well. It's a dingy room. But sometimes, with these scenes, like everyone seems to be in control, right? Or just like so confident. And it's just, you can be the most prepared, but there's always things that go wrong. So I felt it added 2 things to see these emotions in our priests. Like, there is some really good effects and imagery happening here. Right? There's a bit with a cross, like in this white kind of room, this black cross. It's towards the end, but that was just like, wow, that was crazy. Like, there's this other scene again towards the end, and we got Mason in a chair, and the camera kind of draws into him, right? And there's this kind of vacant, like look on his face, like fuck. And that was a great piece of camera work, And just throughout, there's these good scenes. Like there's a bit with this light coming out of someone, So those were really good, right? The situation between Mason and Tanis, I think you do buy into that. There is plenty of stuff left on the table, right? Because the film, it mentions a past between those two. Now, a past as well as the way they grew up, right? Growing up in a cult. There's, so it as I said, it more than hints at something else, but we don't really get into that, which I think, it's one of those ones where like, maybe that could have been added more, but maybe you don't need it, right? But but I think their connection, their relationship, you do buy into that. We do get flashbacks of, as I said, a young Mason and a young Tanis, right? The situation they grew up in and how they got out and all of that. So we see that, which, not great. Not great at all, I think, like Mason's decision to go further into the church is an interesting one, and I think that probably plays into a lot of it. There is an undercurrent on this as a theme, but again, we don't necessarily fully embrace it. But I do, I thought the story was interesting as it's kind of looking at past trauma, right? The scars that could be left upon us from family, right? From situations, survivor's guilt, just all of these things, what drive us to do the things we do, right? Take the paths we take. All of this is kind of explored and, done well, You wonder, though, why do they go to where they go? Right? Like, I don't know if we really got that, right? Because it seems kind of crazy, especially with people still connected to being around. That's all a bit crazy, right? As well as, the gas station situation, right? And, you'll see from the film, but you just like, that made no sense whatsoever, right? As well as going to the house, but there's a lot kind of going on, and especially with the whole kind of looking at, as it said in the synopsis, right, that the holy being may be God and the ramifications of that, right? I thought that was interesting because I think we usually see it from the opposite, right? So seeing it from this was like, Okay. Okay. That's, yeah. All right. Let's run with this. Let's see where this goes. All right. Now, unfortunately, the effects at the very end, they weren't as great. Right? And I get it, right? We see it with Blade, right? Everything up to the end was fantastic. Like, Blade invented bullet time. It wasn't a Matrix. Blade did it first, and just everything else was great. But then with the big monster at the end, oh, that was terrible. But if you listen to the commentary, they ran out of budget. Right? Like, it was just a messy production. They didn't get as much money as they were meant to get. And yeah, it all went to shit. And that's why we got the monster in the way we got it. But, the film was still good, even with that. And the effects at the end aren't great, right? But I didn't think it did too much to harm the film, right? Because we've already got the story. We're at the, it's at the, right? It's literally at the end. So it's just like, it would have been good if these could have been sharper, crisper, better. But I think you're still, if you're enjoying the film, you're still going to enjoy the film, regardless of that. I thought the sound was good. It did add atmosphere, and rather than forcing you to feel these things, the soundtrack worked in accompaniment with everything we were seeing on screen. There were some subtitles, right? Because, Mason with the Vatican, and like those, no background behind them, so we do have that issue. I have no clue what was getting said. But again, it didn't necessarily hurt the enjoyment of the film too much, right? I still was able to gather, I think, probably the gist of what was going on, So yeah, if you enjoy your Shudder originals, if you enjoy your Shudder horror, then I think, Shadow of God may well be for you. I think if you liked The Conjuring Time, Rotted, was it called The Conjuring Time? The Conjuring Hour, that was it, I believe, right? And that was from a good few years ago, right? It was a good film, Yeah, I think that's what it was. But if you enjoyed that, then I think that's a good representation of what this was, So yeah, I think you would enjoy the Shadow of God, right? It is dropping Friday on Shudder, right? If you're a horror aficionado, I imagine you have the platform, right? Because it's got so much good stuff. All the Addams Family joints, which are, it's just worth getting it just for those, right? But yeah, as I said, the acting was good. You bought it. You bought all the emotions and everything like that, right? The script was solid. Effects up until the end were really good. So people, yeah, if you like a an exorcism kind of based story, right? A kind of a psychological horror, then Shadow of God, I think, will probably be for you.